some things are incremental. Let's talk about it on this episode of Pushback.
Go, Jonny, go, go. Go, Jonny, go, go. Go, Jonny, go, go.
If you're concerned about the direction our culture is heading, then maybe it's time to push back.
Hello, my dear listeners. This is Dr. Jonny, and this is another episode of Pushback. I mentioned last week about some back issues that I've been having, and I was scheduled to actually have a low back surgery last Tuesday. And so my last week's podcast was delayed a little. But unfortunately, it wasn't the only thing that was delayed. My surgery itself was delayed 1 week. So I still have not had my surgery. So unfortunately, here I sit, still within a decent amount of low back pain, pretty anxious to go ahead and just get this procedure done and move on with things. But I do appreciate your prayers. And I've gotten so many wonderful messages from people just assuming that I already had surgery and then I had to explain to them that I have yet to undergo the procedure itself. So I'm actually scheduled for next Tuesday. And so hopefully that won't get canceled or delayed by the surgeon. Hopefully when I come to you next week, it'll be post-operatively and hopefully on the pathway to healing as well. So I truly believe in supernatural healing and will continue to receive prayers for that. And I will also proceed in the natural and see how that helps me out here as well. So thank you for your well wishes and for your prayers. And I'm so grateful for you tuning in every week. So this might be a little bit of an abbreviated version because I've been a little bit more flat on my back lately and not a lot of activity going on, but I do want to bring up one issue from last week's podcast. Last week I talked about, I think it was called Tough Pill to Swallow, and about the judgment that came out from a federal judge regarding the abortion pill combination and how he felt like it was not appropriate to go through, and he actually put a hold on it. Unfortunately, there was a temporary stay on it, so it's still available, but it's probably going to end up in front of the Supreme Court, which is not necessarily a bad thing considering the configuration of the Supreme Court. So we'll see what comes of that as well. But I posed a question in the middle of that podcast, which I actually have posed to my family and people that I know and to myself. Last week I didn't really have a great answer to it. I gave a hypothetical situation of, let's say you lived in 1865, right before or during the Civil War, and you as a legislator, a congressman or congresswoman, had the opportunity to write a bill that would legalize slavery for every plantation or slave owner to only have one slave. And they would legally be allowed to have one slave, but it would free all of the other slaves. Would you champion that bill? And the sticky part of it is that you would be freeing many people who were in slavery. At the same token, you'd be signing your name on legislation that would be legalizing slavery for some. It was a hypothetical situation that was hard for my family to answer, and we debated about it. And of course, we can extrapolate that then to this abortion conversation, which is always so on the forefront of my conversation with this podcast, because I believe it's the number one most important civil rights issue, cultural issue, and certainly with pushback, the number one thing we need to push back against. And I proposed the idea of sort of these bills that are coming forward that have limited, quote unquote, abortion and have reduced the weeks. And that has been possible because of Roe versus Wade being overturned and the topic now being returned to the states. So because each state then can debate it on their own, they can put extreme limitations. Some have banned it. Some have put more limitations. Some have increased limitations. And of course, there's been all different types of varieties. But the question then is, if you could champion something that would save even potentially hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of lives, and yet your name would be on the bill that would still legalize abortion up to a certain number of weeks, could you sign that? And that, for me, I guess my only response was, I'm glad I'm not a politician. Because that is the sticky point, isn't it? Is that I can, on this podcast, take a very hard line that life begins at fertilization, and I can make a very, very strong moral argument for that, and I have throughout these 4 seasons of Pushback, and will continue to be an advocate for that. At the same token, there is a realm, there is a sphere of politics that is important and is directly related to the will of the people, democracy, representative republic that we are, that these people who are making these or passing these bills or legislation are representative of us and will be very sensitive to the pulse or the polls of the people. And so I found an article that I just want to read entitled "Republicans Can Reset the Abortion Debate." I think it helped me read this, and I want to read this to you as well, to understand that we don't necessarily need to be have such a hard line when it comes to the political sphere. We are representatives of heaven, and so at the end of the day, we are answerable to God. We know that. But this is written by Ryan T. Anderson of the Wall Street Journal, and this was just released on April 18th. It's titled, "Republicans Can Reset the Abortion Debate. Don't be afraid to defend the unborn, but be prepared to accept incremental progress." This is what he writes. "What do you do when your movement is on the right side of an issue morally, but seems to be losing politically? That's the question the pro-life movement needs to answer, and fast. Abortion policy is receiving renewed attention after this month's election in Wisconsin, in which a left-wing judge won by 11 points after campaigning relentlessly on abortion for a seat on the state's Supreme Court, which has a pending lawsuit over the state's pro-life law. But Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis signed a fetal heartbeat bill last week that protects unborn babies at 6 weeks gestation. His actions suggest that Republicans can win on abortion if they define the terms of the debate." After the Wisconsin result, Ann Coulter tweeted the conventional wisdom. "The demand for anti-abortion legislation just cost Republicans another crucial race. Pro-lifers say we won. Abortion is not a constitutional right anymore. Please stop pushing strict limits on abortion, or there will be no Republicans left," end quote. Ms. Coulter, Ryan Anderson goes on to write, "Ms. Coulter is wrong on several points. There is no evidence the conservative candidate lost in Wisconsin because of abortion. He lost by the same margin in 2020 when he ran as an incumbent for the same office. 2 identical election losses, one before Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health Organization and one after. Seems hard to blame on abortion. The goal of the pro-life movement has never been merely to make abortion not a constitutional right, but to protect unborn babies. In Dobbs, the pro-life movement won a battle, not the war. And while enacting protections for the unborn can be a political challenge, GOP abandonment of the cause will ensure that there will be no Republicans left. This is a truth that even pro-choice Republicans can understand. Their party can't win without its pro-life base turning out to vote." So that's clearly a overriding message, is that Republican conservatives need to up their game in defense of the unborn, obviously at the ballot box, but also engaging public opinion and, of course, our neighbors and those around the water cooler. He goes on to write, "But the GOP also can't win if it continues to let Democrats define the terms of the debate. While it's true that public opinion in America isn't as protective of children in the womb as it should be, Americans are dramatically more pro-life than the Democratic Party. Taxpayer-funded abortion on demand throughout all 9 months of pregnancy, the official Democratic platform, is extremely unpopular, going too far even for many Democratic voters. The pro-life movement and the GOP have an opportunity to expose this left-wing extremism. When articulate politicians do this, they win. Mr. DeSantis, no shrinking violet in front of hostile media, ran for re-election in 2022, having signed into law a pain-capable bill which protects babies after 15 weeks that same year. He won by 19 points. Last week, while considering a presidential bid, he signed the heartbeat bill, which I believe actually protects babies down to 6 weeks. In Ohio, Governor Mike DeWine won last year by 25 points after signing a heartbeat law. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp and Texas Governor Greg Abbott both won decisive victories after signing heartbeat laws. Senator Marco Rubio was reelected by 16 points after expressing strong support for a 15-week federal limit. As Texas and Florida enacted their abortion laws, they also enacted policies to make the choice for life easier. Lawmakers in Austin allocated an additional $100 million to the Texas Alternatives to Abortion program, and their counterparts in Tallahassee launched an important fatherhood initiative. Polling shows that lack of support from a child's father is one of the most significant factors in a woman's decision to abort. Florida's heartbeat bill also came with a $25 million in additional annual funding for the Florida Pregnancy Care Network. The pro-life movement has always served both mothers and children, and America's post-Roe policies should focus both on prohibiting abortion and supporting the choice for life. I just believe that's key. I believe not only fatherlessness is absolutely 100% connected to abortion, but obviously abstinence teaching as well. If we can raise awareness and help fund those situations, I believe that we can drive abortion numbers down dramatically. All of the laws enacted by the pro-life governors re-elected in 2022, and every current pro-life law in America have protections for the life of the mother, and several have exceptions in case of rape or incest. Running an absolutist, I believe this is a key paragraph, running an absolutist pro-life platform now is the mirror image of the mistake Democrats have made running on an absolutist pro-abortion platform. Some tolerance for less than ideal laws is politically necessary. So too is a willingness to work incrementally, enacting a pain-capable law today, if that's possible, working to shape public opinion, and passing a heartbeat bill later. Florida accomplished that in only a year. Now, we can read that paragraph, and that's actually inspiring, and I would look at Governor DeSantis as a hero of the cause, but still it does require us to plug our nose and say that it is still allowing abortion to a certain degree. And these are sometimes hard to read for those of us who have absolutely drawn a line in the sand and actually say this is when life begins. We can say that with all certainty. And we know, as I've stated before, that if we concentrate on that debate, then we are always going to be on the morally right standard or platform. Because nobody can agree on when life begins, but we can all agree that we shouldn't be wrong about when life begins. And the only way that we cannot be wrong about when life begins is to agree that life begins at fertilization. Now, 6 weeks is closer, and 6 weeks heartbeat bills save thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of lives. And so for that, we have to be willing to, in the political realm, move incrementally. In the spiritual realm, we cannot waver on truth. Given that 93% of abortions in America occur before 13 weeks, the pro-life movement can't accept European-style abortion policies as a permanent solution. But going beyond that will require moral and political leadership. Several contenders for the 2024 GOP presidential nomination have had difficulty articulating a clear position, which drives me crazy, by the way. Pro-abortion extremists get a free pass to lie about pro-life laws and demonize the party that supports them. Recent pro-abortion ballot initiatives passed and pro-life ones failed, largely because pro-lifers lacked leadership and were outspent and lost the messaging battle. Despite every abortion prohibition having explicit protections for life-saving medical care for mothers, media and activists repeatedly asserted in 2022 that pro-life laws jeopardize maternal health. For months, voters heard a barrage of lies about the supposed prohibition of treatment for ectopic pregnancies and miscarriages simply because GOP politicians refused to spend the political capital to respond. None of the things the Democrats said were true. They were outlandish, and yet we didn't respond. Pro-lifers in the GOP need to push back against these lies at both the state and federal levels. Democrats in Congress have introduced legislation to codify abortion on demand and nullify state-level pro-life laws. The GOP and the pro-life movement can't allow the pro-abortion left to nationalize the issue, leaving their side to defend pro-life laws at the state level alone. Most important, GOP leaders need to champion the truth about the precious child in the womb. The entity that ultrasound technicians refer to as, quote, your baby, end quote, whose heartbeat expectant mothers and fathers anxiously wait to hear, and whose grainy pictures we share in text messages, is a human being of profound worth, standing for the inherent and equal dignity of every human being, places the pro-life movement on the right side of this issue morally. Compared with democratic extremism, pro-lifers are also on the right side as a political matter too, so long as they don't demand everything at once or cower and let the media and pro-abortion politicians drive the conversation. The pro-life movement needs to work incrementally toward its goal of an America where every child is protected by law and welcomed in life. If we move steadily forward, one step at a time, we will get there. Extremely well-written article. I was inspired. It helped to me focus on the fact that I can be an ambassador of heaven and stand on absolute truth and still understand that I'm part of a world, a world that has evil intentions, and yet I can still understand that there can be incremental victories and wins. Roe versus Wade was definitely one of them. And we need to celebrate that. But we cannot sit on our hands. We cannot relax. It was the beginning and not the end. It says in Matthew 10:16, behold, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. Therefore, be as wise as serpents and harmless as doves. But be aware of men, for they will deliver you up to councils and scourge you in their synagogues. For you will be brought before governors and kings for my sake as a testimony to them and to the Gentiles. But when they deliver you up, do not worry about how or what you should speak, for it will be given to you in that hour what you should speak. For it is not you who speak, but the Spirit of your Father who speaks in you. Such a powerful paragraph. Now, we're very comfortable with this idea of being harmless as doves. We get that part, but the idea of being wise as serpents, we get a little bit uncomfortable because of this character in Genesis. But it says when he told this to the 12, be as wise as serpents and harmless as doves, he laid down a general principle about the technique of the kingdom of God and its work. As we take the gospel to a hostile world, we must be wise, not letting the enemy set snares for us, and we must be innocent, serving the Lord blamelessly. I believe it can be both and. Jesus was not suggesting that we stoop to deception, but that we should model some of the serpent's famous shrewdness in a positive way. Wisdom does not equal dishonesty, and innocence does not equal gullibility. We have been prepared for this. We have been prepared for this moment. Roe v. Wade shows what the kingdom of heaven can do here on this earth. And we need to be okay to incrementally seek victories and protection for the unborn. And then, as the article said, We work on the background. We work on the hearts of the people. That's what William Wilberforce did in England in regards to slavery. He changed the hearts of the people. And then when the hearts of the people change, the hearts of the politicians will change. But we need to be willing to take incremental steps. I don't look at Ron DeSantis as an evil person by signing a heartbeat bill. I think it was a heroic thing to do. And we need to be okay with that in the realm of politics. But in my heart, we know what's true and we know what's right and we know what the goal is. We know what the end point is. It's important that we stay focused on that. Wise as serpents, innocent as doves. I believe that we can do that together. Thank you again for tuning in this week. We'll see how next week goes with surgery, etc. But I will connect with you again next week at some point. So until then, let's go together to set and shape the culture.